www.anxietycenter.com.
So hi, Jim. This
Hi.
is Tina.
Hi, Tina.
I'm returning, in 2012, I reached out to you guys, and Marilyn really helped me, and I was going really well. And in parallel, though, I was dealing with a close family member that had, a drug addiction. So it was very hard, a bit to maintain. So just forwarding to this year, recently I had a flu, and with that flu, I had symptoms, and I was always focused on my heart earlier on. So while I had the flu, I started having my heart racing, and for almost a week, the first week of the flu, my heart rate was about a 130. Like day and night, and then it was slowly going down, but of course I kept checking out. So it's almost, and then, high blood pressure and things like that. And now I'm really, really struggling with sleep. So this has been 2 weeks.
Okay.
I'm now realizing and that I wasn't, I started kind of thinking differently. The symptoms of anxiety that I had, back in 2012 and and all that, like panic attacks and things like that, didn't come back, and the same kind of triggers weren't in place. But I think I kind of got different mechanism to coping, and they probably weren't very good, coping with, my close family member that had, drug use. So I think I got different ways of coping that were probably not healthy, but I didn't recognize them as anxiety. And I think it's leading me up again to being really ramped up in anxiety. And now I'm kind of looking back with work and things like that. And I guess I've been anxious or not managing it well for a couple of years now, if I really look back. So I've started back, with a therapist at anxietycenter.com, and I'm rereading, refreshing my brain on the different things that you have. But, I'm just wondering, it almost kind of blindsided me, like, and why is that? I just, I'm just feeling it now.
Sure. Yeah. Well, there's a number of pieces to that. One is when you're dealing with a family member who's struggling, drug addiction or relationships or whatever, and we become their support person, even loosely, it still is taxing on us because we want to help and we're trying to, get that person to do what they need to do and support them. And sometimes there's distress involved. We're not sure how to manage it. So that's stressful. And so if we have a job, which is stressful, and we come home to relax, and those relaxed hours, or many of them are filled up with trying to be a support person, well, that builds up stress. And if we aren't being aware of that stress moment by moment, and then taking countermeasures like increasing deep relaxation, setting limits on when the person can contact, it's easy over the course of time to get that nervous system cranked up again. And it's also invisible because, typically how it starts to raise up is we just get busier and busier and busier, and we're not really noticing any symptoms. So we just keep thinking everything's okay. And we're not doing any, over-the-top counterbalancing. So next thing you know, down the road, we just crash because the body says, okay, that's enough. Or worse is when we start to have some symptoms come back and we start reacting to the symptoms again, then we can spiral that up. Or, as what happened in maybe your case, if we're going along and all of a sudden we catch a flu course, depending on the severity of the flu, the body fights the flu by increasing metabolism, hence heart rate, sweating, and so on and so forth. So if we have, some invisible stress going on and the flu comes along, which then stresses the body on top of that, we have the kind of a perfect storm for us to recycle back into some of the old struggle we used to have. And then all of a sudden that old struggle becomes a concern again. I'm not sure it has for you, but that's kind of a common thing we see where people do really great. All of a sudden there's a series of stressors, they have an event and the body's crashing again. Then they start to get concerned about anxiety again, thinking, oh my gosh, I'm back at the beginning. This is terrible. And then that whole thing gets going again. So it's a
Right.
common scenario.
It is okay.
Yeah, yeah,
Kind of relapsing in a way.
yeah. And then the
Yeah.
other thing too that's common when we're working on our underlying factors and we're making good progress, and we're forgetting about anxiety, we don't have any more symptoms, we're engaged in life and just sort of going along really and going in life again. Well, it's easy sometimes to slip back into some of the old behaviors that got us in trouble in the first place. And we're not aware of it because we're feeling good and it's not that big a deal and whatever. But then when the body crashes, it's like, whoa. And so it's also common for people to, okay, going back into the materials, getting back to the basics. Maybe there's some underlying factors that I need to work on yet. It's kind of, as we work through this, that's the process. Most people don't, start with their underlying factors and work till they're done. That's not how it works. We wish it would, because then they'd be done. But it's usually we work to a point where we're experiencing really good things in life again, and then we just sort of stop and say, "Good, I'm good." But we still have other things that aren't addressed, and over the course of time, they do catch up. So this is all common, nothing to be concerned with. With respect to sleep, when the body's fighting a flu, which is stressful, and if you've had stress from some of the things going on in your life, and your body's letting you know now, and of course, one of the first ways the body lets us know is disrupted sleep, because we can either have a tough time falling asleep, or we can fall asleep great, and then we'll wake up 2 hours later and we're wide awake, can't sleep again,
Yeah.
or it's a whole series of things through the night. Great indications that we've let the body stress get too high.
Yeah, it's been like that. So my sleep has been very, very disrupted. So I tend to go the whole night, and I don't feel like I've slept. So I might have,
Yeah.
or I might not. But I sense a wakefulness the whole night. And then I'm afraid that my heart rate will go up and my blood pressure will go up because I haven't slept. And then, this whole cycle of anxiety has started for me. I feel again. So this is why I reached out to a therapist
Sure.
I need to reset something. There's some things that I'm going back to the old, and I need to kind of refocus on that. I understand that.
And a lack of sleep doesn't help. I mean, if our sleep is broken and we feel like we've been awake all night, well, how does the body compensate? Guess what? By increasing cortisol production.
Yeah, exactly.
The last thing we really need, So how we have to get things back on track is this is where we really have to go into stress reduction and relaxation as often as you can, and especially containing the thinking, oh my gosh, I'm back here again. What if I start struggling again and all these fears come back? We have to say, hey, wait a minute here. I'm just stressed.
Yeah.
My body's stressed. It's not sleeping. My job is to gear the stress down. As my body gears down, it'll sleep again.
Yes,
And
I've been there before, so I know I can do it. It's when you're in it, it's a little harder because you're so kind of focused on that. But I can speak. I can talk to myself a little more this time around. But yes.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing to keep in mind too is, I think from our materials and from working with Marilyn, is that when the body is stressed, well, the brain spends more time in danger mode. It's looking for danger. Everything's going to seem dangerous. Everything's going to seem urgent because we have that, surveillance system and survival mechanism kicked right in. Yeah. And so, when glutamate goes up, GABA goes down. GABA is a nice relaxation, neurotransmitter where glutamate's the one that gets us excited. So it's up. It's got the brain focused on all the threats and dangers. So that's where our mind's going to go.
Right.
So we have to work hard to get that, brain shifted back down, or get out of that survival mode and move back into the rest mode. And we can do we can do that. We can increase GABA by increasing our deep relaxation. Research has shown that for those who meditate, not sleep, because when we nap, we're not thinking with our prefrontal cortex, but if we're meditating, and meditation, I'm not insinuating, East religion or whatever. What meditation means is just focusing your mind on pleasing or neutral things. If we do that and we keep thinking about those neutral things, well, the prefrontal cortex is engaged, which creates GABA. So when we're doing that, increasing deep relaxation can help, laying down and resting, watching fun, maybe boring kind of shows or documentaries where you don't really have to pay too much attention and you're not emotionally engaged. Well, it might be uncomfortable initially as you're doing that because the body wants to go. But as you keep doing that, the body eventually starts gearing itself down. And as it gears down, then sleep can come on more and more and more. But again, it's another process you have to work at. Sleep doesn't come back the next night. It does, because when that body gets geared up, it just wants to stay there. Remember that thermostat
It's been
illustration.
16 days, right? I mean, 16 days. I know I've slept in those, but I do use kind of meditation. at night when I'm not sleeping, I kind of, concentrate on my breathing and things like that, and try not to
Yeah.
think of anything. So
Good for you.
I'm
Yep.
very calm. So I think
Good.
I'm able to keep that.
Yep.
But I'm so glad you guys are there. And I miss Marilyn, but you
Oh,
have, I've connected with another great one. So
oh,
I'm
good for
super
you.
happy. Thank you very much for all you do.
Oh, you're more than welcome. It's our pleasure to help. We've been there. We know how much of a struggle it is. So we're pleased to help.
Yeah,
What's
well,
this?
my
Let's just sleep.
physician just says, "Oh, it's just stress, and that's it." And I'm like, "Okay."
Yeah, yeah. They don't understand how it affects us.
They just want to
uh,
give me pills, and
yeah,
I refuse to go there. I need to learn how, I need to learn tools, and pills for me is not a tool. It might be for
yeah,
others, but just for me, it's not.
yeah. I'm with you there. I like to be in charge of what my
Especially
body
with the
does.
dependency of my close family member, I really don't want to go there.
Mm, right. Yeah, 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 yeah. Totally. Now, are you out of that now? Can you take a break from that? Or are you still a part of that, helping your family member?
So actually, uh, it's been good for the past, I'd say 6 months. So it's been good.
Okay, good.
But we're still, it was 8 years, right? So I think we're
I,
just not out of that. And I went into more of a, kind of a shell, protective shell in those days,
mm-hmm.
tried to protect myself. And I think there was some depression as well, because I felt a bit trapped. So I think
Oh,
this is
sure.
all the ramping up of all these things. It's been a really long journey. So, but
Yeah.
I also react, my symptoms usually is always after the stress, right?
Yep.
I
Yep.
always get symptoms after. So I'm almost wondering if this is almost a repercussion of after.
Sure. Yeah. As you know, that's very common. One of the reasons is because when we're immersed in it, all those bodies pumping hormones, we're not really noticing how the body's feeling. But then when we sort of get a chance to, sort of let down and relax, that's usually when we notice it the most. So it's very, very common that happens. And so one of the ways to prevent that is to, as we mentioned at the website, is to do stress management ongoing. Do a good, careful evaluation of how much stress things are causing, and then making sure you're doing enough to offset it each day rather than, I'm going to go for 2 weeks and then try to get caught up, because getting caught up takes way longer and it's way harder than actually managing moment by moment. Harder to do, though, especially when you're dealing with a loved one who's having some issue that you have to help them through. You just don't get the time to be able to do that effectively, but the more you can do it, the better off you are. So there isn't that buildup of catch up that you have to do after.
And you're so right, because in the early days when I was, with Marilyn and all that, I really was very diligent at having, a kind of a body scan on a regular basis to be able
Mm-hmm.
to kind of calm down. And that really helped me get through. And then I kind of stopped doing that. And then,
Yeah.
I took on more and more things. And you're correct. I think stepping back to start doing all that will alleviate a lot of my symptoms.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's unfortunate that today's society, a lot of us do that. I'm included there. I give myself heck sometimes too, because I push myself way farther than I should. But our society is so caught up in rushing, and our attention is so distracted so often, we don't give the body what it needs to keep pace. And so it isn't that long before the body lets us know that, hey, it needs attention here. And then often, it shows up with symptoms. So again, moment by moment stress reduction is the best way to do it, even if you're feeling great.
Yeah.
Because, I think most of us who've been through anxiety disorder and out the other side still have times where we look back and say, man, I really messed up. I should have spent more time decompressing than I did. And I knew it, just didn't do it. But, if we make that a habit, making sure we build in that time each day to decompress, sufficient time to decompress from the day, we'll always keep our body in a good shape. But I understand it's hard to do with all the pressures today.
Well, also managing, a year ago at my work, they decided to do an open work plan. And I'm very introverted. And, that is so disruptive to me, having an
Yep.
open space where I don't have a moment to calm down, relax, or just kind of get away from all the noise. And for me, it's almost chaotic. So when I work from home, I'm much more able to manage my stress. So that environment is really, really disruptive to me. And, you have to think, okay, now what do I do?
Yeah,
So,
yeah. You make a good point. I mean, well, a couple of things there too is typically anxious people have a higher IQ than the normal. And so there's a bit of a giftedness going on. And gifted people receive sensory information far more intensely than those who aren't. And then if we're introverted, and I'm an introvert as well, it's great to be able to chat with people and those things, but on a limited basis. It drains me if I'm in it too long. And so if you're in a work environment where you're exposed to everybody, for 8 hours, that can be taxing. So I hope you found some ways to, get away and manage it to get that peace and quiet time.
yeah, not at the moment, but I read this great article, a while back, and I'm actually sharing it with HR because, I was speaking to someone at work about this article, and that person was telling me, you're bringing up such a good point because I can actually pinpoint who are introverts here, and those same people are the ones struggling with this workspace. So this is something that really needs to be addressed. So, because we need to accommodate to every type of person. So thank you.
Would you mind emailing me that link if you wouldn't mind, the article?
Yes, that's fine. That's great.
Yeah.
I will.
We want to be talking more about, the giftedness and the, extrovert versus introvert side of our personality so we can accommodate. Because again, we're not all wired the same. We all have different preferences, and introverts like to have that quiet time and, to be thoughtful. Whereas extroverts love to be engaged with other people. But if we're engaging with extroverts all day, man, our energy is going to be zapped. And if we're not compensating by good stress management practices, it's not long before the body's stressed again.
Exactly. So in the past year, you're driving, so you're alert, and then you're going to work. And for me, there's almost this chaotic environment. And then I was coming home, as well, and it wasn't very calm. So I wasn't necessarily able to. They did away with some rooms, like all the meeting rooms are now glass. So, before that, I used to go into a meeting room and be able to do my relaxation. And I don't even have that anymore. So that really had a huge impact on managing my anxiety. But thank you. Discussing it actually is bringing things up.
Yes, yeah. When I was working in an office environment, I had my own office, so I was able to close the door and meditate, which I really found helpful. But not having that option, I'm not sure what I'd have done back then. So it's an important thing to raise, especially for HR people. When you're trying to get the best out of your people, you don't want to be burning out a select few because they're just in the wrong environment. So good for you for bringing that up.
Okay, thank you, and I will send you that article. Thanks.
Awesome, that'd be great.